Hello, I'm George Moschoglou, coming to you from the LG Digital Broadcast Studio at Georgetown SCS. In focus today, timeless principles for successful project management. We'll be talking with Dora Gougoufkas, Managing Vice President, Head of Commercial Transformation Office, and Chief of Staff to the Commercial Banking President at Capital One. Dora, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're all eager to hear from your journey and learn and understand the essence of what makes project management successful. So to kick off our discussion, I'd like to ask you, what do you believe is key to successful project management?
It's a great question. In my experience, every project and program is different. You've got different set of context, you've got different scope, you have different participants and stakeholders and risks and business objectives that you're managing. And so regardless of all those things, I think there's a few things for me that continue to be timeless in terms of what's important and valuable as we're managing projects. The most important, or one of the most important, is effective prioritization. It's really foundational for us to focus in on equally where we say yes, as much as it is where we say no. And for our organization and for me, I found that the ability for us to really focus in our strategies and prioritize those that are of the highest value really is an important principle. A second important item would be really thinking about risk management and how you evaluate and assess and then mitigate all the risks that might impede progress and your project success. Third, I would point to leadership. Project managers are at that heart, the core of really helping the work really continue to move along and progress. And so you really need to be able to help lead your teams and your stakeholders through change. That can be difficult when sometimes projects create tension for an organization or perhaps even confusion. And so it's really important that project managers are able to lead themselves as they lead others and ensure that they're helping the organization become more resilient over time. And finally is relationship building. It is impossible to execute work and to support your stakeholders and business objectives without having trust in your organization and mutual trust across your organization. No matter where that is, in person, virtual, across the globe, or across the country, it's really important that you invest in that building of relationships for a successful project. Great.
So your emphasis on those four principles of effective prioritization, risk management, leadership, and relationship building truly resonates with evolving dynamics of project management today. So let's talk through those one by one. Across industries, we're seeing a push for corporations to use the resources more effectively. How do you think about prioritization in this environment?
Yeah, it's important. Effective prioritization is important now more than ever. We've got additional constraints that all businesses are facing. We have a rapidly changing environment and ecosystem around us. And you want to ensure that you are focusing your talent and your resources on your highest value work. So it's, imperative to ensure that you're meeting your business objectives. In my experience, there's two areas of focus that I've been really excited about that have helped our organization and I found to be useful. One of those is, we lovingly call it the front door, which is really an intake mechanism and a governance mechanism to help us make decisions. And that helps us both not just scope and scale and understand the business case for bodies of work, but then also make those relative trade-offs against each other. It also creates a framework for us to assess the impacts to the organization and the risks that might bear fruit that we need to go and to ensure that we're mitigating against, which is really important. And then finally creates a mechanism for us to govern and ensure that all of the projects that we are executing are done in the way that we would like in doing that in an enduring and well-managed way. A second body of work that I've led has been related to processes and process optimization. And at its heart, that's really focused in ensuring when you think end-to-end about our entire business value chain, that all of the micro bodies of work in the organization are pointed actually at the macro picture. And so we're really focused in on the client experience and the associate experience and sequencing the work accordingly. And we've seen impact to the organization, both with our front door. We've had tough conversations with our business partners and our business leaders to navigate and discuss the trade-offs and the choices to our business and defer lower priority items. And then as it relates to business process, it really helps you think about both the skills that are needed and how you would help ensure that as you're enabling and improving that customer experience, you're doing that in a really thoughtful way that's integrated with your digitization strategy, if you have one, or in technology projects. So it's a huge enabler for me for success. Our project managers, I view as, at their heart, the folks that really get our business strategies accomplished. They're the enablers of all of our work. And so having those muscles are really important, that they can prioritize, understanding the criteria that an organization should use, whatever those principles are for your organization that you're supporting, are really important.
Are there any of these priorities you identified relate to AI or other emerging technologies, and what approaches do you take to evaluating or implementing those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Emerging technologies are really a space that require a very thoughtful and deliberate approach, particularly as you think about how to navigate the risks and govern all of the changes introduced with those technologies. For me, I think about having a really broad organizational support model and a cross-functional team. You absolutely need to have your business partners at the table. In addition, obviously, to our tech and product and design partners, it's equally important that you've got risk, legal, potentially any external affairs or other advocacy groups that might be a part of the organization's assessment of how those technologies will be used, that are all part of how you might think through using that technology. They can be micro changes to how we work that help really create a more effective meeting routine that might document, the minutes for a meeting, but they can also be much more complex technology initiatives that actually use data and then might inform decision making. There's three things that I think about in particular in lenses that we need to ensure that you're thinking about for emerging technologies. One is related to talent and development, and really ensuring you've got a very thoughtful development plan to ensure that you've got enduring skills that have been implemented for your associates that can be sustained, and that the translation articulation of those technologies is consistent across the organization. The other is the actual platforming and technology, and ensuring that you've got use cases that you can pilot, taking those small opportunities to test and learn along the way. And doing that, of course, in very, very close partnership with your risk and governance organizations to ensure that as you're introducing those new technologies, you've thought through all of the appropriate mitigants that are needed and are doing that in a very, again, effective way for your organization, which is likely going to require changes to your policies, to your standards, to your procedures, and to your business processes end to end. So risk is really an important part of how to think through and implement safe technologies. And connected to that is, of course, how you think about and navigate change across all those dimensions as well.
Yeah, you mentioned change, so let's build on that. The change is constant in project management, and it often requires meticulous navigation and adaptation. Yeah. Why do you think change management is so important?
It really is, in my experience, one of the most important elements of successful execution. You may have heard the saying, the culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. And it's very true. You really, strong cultures, it can be difficult to implement change, and it can be very resistant as well. So ensuring that you have a very thoughtful framework to support and navigate the organization is paramount. And our project managers, and in my experience, no matter what the body of work, they tend to be across different functions. They tend to have a large working group. Some of the problems are complex, and so they require a really expansive point of view and way of thinking. And equally important to that is really ensuring that you've thought through all of the implications of any of the resulting changes in your organization. And I view our most successful project managers as those who can really ensure that the organization is operational, that our clients are ready, that our associates are ready. And I've experienced that multiple times in my career, where it's really been the differentiator to actually take the execution of our project and have that be sustainable and durable for the organization, and not really be something that winds down when a project is closed and the culture or organization might revert back to old practices. So it really is an important part of strong execution.
Good. More broadly, a big change we're seeing has to do with returning to the office. For the past few years, most of us have been working from home or working remotely, and now there seems to be a big push back to the office. How are you effectively leading your hybrid teams?
Yeah, it's such an important topic right now, and one that people have very strong opinions about how and where they work. And as a project manager, many times you're operating in a matrixed organization where you might not be co-located, you might not be on the same continent, you might have some in the office with you or others that are not co-located. So it's really important in that sense that you really think about the community that you are creating, and be very intentional too about how you're going to actually create those norms for your organization to work effectively. In my experience, I found there's a few things that are really beneficial to support those virtual or in-person or distance norms. One is really having clear communications and really being very thoughtful and intentional with your business partners and your project participants on how you'll communicate, when you'll communicate, where you'll communicate. That's an important part of success to any project. Setting boundaries around how the team will work is also really important. What are the ways of working and norms that will be established in order for everyone to be on the same page and understand how the project is progressing and what needs to get done? And then, of course, making sure that you're all committed to continuing to execute in that same way. So commitment to each other, making sure that you are thinking about how those ways of working might impact your fellow peers that aren't in the same office or country with you, and being very inclusive in how you do so. So it's a problem we're all solving together, but I think if you really focus in on those commitments to each other, setting appropriate boundaries and communicating effectively, you can really have a much more impactful project team.
That's a valuable perspective. Dora, thanks for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure, and thanks to everyone out there for watching.